Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing all? I hope you are doing well, staying healthy, enjoying life, and must be planning to improve your life. Here we are to do so. Here daily we read a chapter of a novel to develop reading habit to improve our English, including reading, writing, listening, speaking, vocabulary at the same time, enhancing our knowledge. As we know, reading is the best practice to develop all these things, which help us in many ways. Reading could be one of the good hobby to make a change in ourselves, as we have heard from many prominent personalities that books change their life, add value, widen their knowledge. We can live other life while reading a book and get all those experience and learn from their mistake. So why to commit same mistake if we can learn from them and improve our life? So join me in this journey to become best version of ourselves. Before starting, I would love to hear your thought in comment section. Remember to share with your loved one to to, to change their life as well. And don't forget to subscribe my channel. Press the bell icon for daily updates. As you know that daily we read a chapter of a novel to improve ourselves. So let's start today chapter. Today we are going to read a chapter One Dark Day. It is a part of novel Like It Happened Yesterday, which is written by Ravinder Singh. So today we are going to read this chapter One Dark Day and see what is there for us. So let's start.
13. One dark day. If I remember it well, it was around mid April that year when I had my first chance to see a movie at a theater. The afternoon was pleasant, and my friends and I had gone to watch the matinee show. It was a totally unplanned event. In fact, our final exams were going on and we had one on that day as well, history exam, the most boring of all. As usual, by 12:30 p.m. most of the students had arrived at school. The exam was scheduled to start sharp at 1 p.m. The school bags on our shoulders that day were light, as we carried only the relevant study material for the exam. The question papers and clipboards in everyone's hands transmitted the anxiety of exams in the air. A last minute sharpening of pencils or checking the ink in our pens kept most of us busy. One could see the before the exam nervousness on practically everyone's face. A handful of confident top rankers also tried to fake the nervousness. Most of them, as usual, kept saying, I don't know. What will happen in today's exam? I don't remember anything that I studied last night. It was their modus operandi to make the others appear well prepared just before the exam, so that they didn't revise any more, while they themselves kept revising, saying they were nervous. It was a trick that everyone knew about, and yet it was practiced. On the other hand, the low rank holders of the class were, as usual, also confident about their preparation. Most of them, as usual, kept saying, history is a story. We will write one for every question. Big deal. Standing among that noisy herd, in front of the huge entrance area of the school, the rest of us were testing each other on the dates and events section from the appendix of the book. That was the best last minute brush up one could do before a history exam. Amit asked me one question. When was Mahatma Gandhi born? 2nd October, I replied, recalling the public holiday. Abey, year bata. Date nahi. He had asked for the year and not just the date. Year? Hum. 1940, I answered. Then, looking at the expression on his face, I quickly said, Nahi, 1937. He chuckled and said, You mean Gandhiji was 10 years old when we got our freedom? Overhearing that, Gurpreet, who was standing close to us, started laughing. However, She also didn't know the answer. 1869, Amit updated us. That felt like an insult to me, humiliated in front of a third person, that too a girl. Okay, okay, now let me ask you one. I opened my book and asked him to close his. Chal Bata, First Battle of Panipat Kab hui thi? I questioned him about the date of the historic battle. 1526, he answered instantaneously, with a victorious smile. I verified his answer. He was absolutely right. My ego was bruised. He knew more than me. And the second battle of Panipat. I quizzed him back, hoping he would be wrong this time. Second battle. 15, yes, 1556. He blurted out the date as soon as his brain fished it out of the calendar installed in his memory. Unfortunately, he was right again. His level of confidence shattered mine. In my mind, there were only two ways to feel comfortable in the moments before the exam. First, if you could correctly answer the questions that someone asked you. And second, if you couldn't answer someone else's question, that someone else should not be able to answer yours as well. For me, neither of the two had worked. So I raised the bar and looked for a difficult question. This was to restore my confidence, however small. Will you be comfortable answering anything from the Mughal period? Amit nodded. When did Anarakli die? He broke into laughter immediately. We don't have Anarakli in our books. Must be Razia Sultana. Check it out. I took another look through the dates and events page and, exactly 3 seconds later, I plunged into oceans of jealousy as well as sadness. He was right. What a blunder. The bell rang and interrupted our Q&A session. We now had to go inside the examination room and take up our designated seats. I closed my book and looked at Ahmed. He asked me, should I tell you the date when Razia Sultana died? That was too much to bear. No need. Leave it. All the best. I said and ran inside. I heard Ahmed shouting, all the best, to me behind my back. Did it matter now? We were seated in our respective classrooms to take the exam. But then, all of a sudden, things changed. Some Moraji Desai had passed away. And one of our teachers, who was the invigilator for my class, broadcast the news that the history exam had been postponed to the next day. I didn't know who Moraji Desai was and what his death had to do with our history exam. My best guess was that he must have been on our school committee. There were a few more like me in the crowd, but some intelligent soul updated all of us that he was the fourth Prime Minister of India. I am sure, on hearing that, Amit would have added that date to the calendar in his memory. Anyway, the conclusion was that now we had time on our hands. Mature human beings mourn someone's death. Immature ones like us go out for a movie. And that's what we did. Everyone realized that it was pointless to reread history. What difference would it make? And, anyhow, we had the whole night and the entire morning of the next day to revise the syllabus. Lakshmi Talkies was playing Karan Arjun. I had never watched a movie in a theatre till then. My hometown, Burla, didn't have any theatre. The only one in the town had shut down long back. I wondered if I had enough money to watch the show. Sushil told me that Lakshmi Talkies was the cheapest of all the theatres in Sambalpur and the ticket price per show was only 5 rupees. The matinee show suited us all, and we joyfully discovered that each of us had 5 rupees to spare. So we left for the theatre. While everyone had their own bicycle, I adjusted myself on the front bar of Nandu's bicycle. After he'd pedaled half the way, we exchanged our seats. Before leaving for the movie, I had called my neighbors from the school phone. They lived next door to our house and were the only ones who possessed a landline telephone in the vicinity. Every one who knew about their phone used to treat them as their messengers. It probably irritated them, which was why, half the time, they didn't pass on the messages. But I made sure that they would inform my mother. That was my first visit to a place like Lakshmi Talkies, an experience still etched in my mind. It was dark inside the hall, with dilapidated seats and the cold wool coming out of the covers in places. A few men whistled, but I couldn't see them. All of us sat in the second row from the front. The dialogues echoed in the hall, and it was an experience in itself to see the big heroes, the big villains, and the big heroines on that screen. Time and again, someone or other kept opening the door under the exit display, which used to illuminate the front few rows and blur the picture. Every time in those split seconds of light, I noticed a few familiar faces in the initial rows. They were the rickshaw pullers who used to drop off a few primary class students to our school. It felt good to see them, and I mentioned them to my classmates. Sushil told me to shut up and concentrate on the movie. Amrish Puri will rape someone now, he told me without looking at me, his eyes glued to the screen. I wanted to wave at the rickshaw pullers. But they, too, were just concentrating on the screen. So I had no choice but to resume looking at Amrish Puri. I loved the fighting scenes of the movie, and the double roles of the heroes made it extremely interesting. At interval, the yellow light bulbs were turned on and doors of the theater were opened. Suddenly, everyone got up from their seats and left the hall. I looked around to see how many people had turned up to watch the movie. They were all men, and I found that it was just the few of us who were neatly dressed. The rest of the crowd looked as if they had come from the slums. Sushil looked at my expression and said, "पाँच रुपए की ticket में यही जुगाड़ मिलेगा." This is all you can expect for a 5 rupee ticket. All of us ignored Sushil's comment and went to the toilet. A long queue welcomed us in front of those 8 or 10 urinals. I was appalled at the condition of the place. Water was leaking everywhere, and the stench of urine filled my nostrils. Cigarette butts and biddies, the locally rolled cigar ends, floated in the water on the floor. There were a few dumped in the urinals as well. The red stain of pan spit had painted every nook and corner of the toilet. Most of the people took a leak first, and then went out to have a quick tea. I felt sick to my guts and could not bear to think of eating or drink anything at that time. Had it not been for the exciting film, I would probably have left. The film was good, and it made me forget the surroundings. It started from where it had stopped, and soon we were all absorbed in watching. The heroes were able to beat the villain in their new avatars after rebirth. Dusk had fallen by the time we all came out of the movie theater. We ate a few samosas and drank a cup of tea each from a nearby restaurant, after which my friends dropped me off at the bus stop. I was the only one who had to catch a bus to get back home. They left when I was able to find the bus that I was supposed to board. It had been a great day for me, my first outing with my friends in Sambalpur. I was happy and excited. However, unlike other days, on that evening, I was boarding a late bus. Usually, by that time, I would be at home. This evening I expected to reach home only by dinner time. There were only a handful of people inside the bus. Most of the seats were empty. As the first few rows were not so good for long distance travel, I found myself a seat at the rear of the bus. It was on the right side of the aisle, next to the window. I slid open the window pane to let the fresh air in, and started to look outside. The street lights were on, and so were the lights in the small shops. Inside the bus, it was close to dark. There were lights installed on the roof of the bus, but since the insides of the lamp shades were full of dirt and dead insects, most of the light was getting blocked, creating a faint glimmer. The driver ignited the engine, and the bus started up with a vibration, followed by a creaky sound that became a part and parcel of the journey. An old man sat diagonally behind me, towards my left. I saw him staring at me. He appeared strange. He was chewing pan. He was bald apart from a patch of hair behind his ears, and wore a thick pair of glasses. I could faintly see that he was dressed in a shirt and a dhoti. Every time I looked at him, he felt uncomfortable and tried not to make any eye contact with me. But from the left corner of my eye, I watched him observing me. I tried to recall if I had ever seen him earlier, but I didn't recall any such moment. Soon, I decided to ignore him and tilted my head towards the window and got absorbed in looking outside. I thought about the scenes from the movie and then remembered I still had the history exam the next day. I kept thinking about a lot of things. Then tiredness took over me, and I don't recall when I fell asleep. I woke up with a start when I suddenly felt someone's hand on my shoulder. It was the conductor pulling at the collar of my shirt. Ticket. Ticket? He asked when he saw me awake. I blinked and looked here and there to make sense of where I was. I realized I had been in a deep sleep. The bus had traveled a lot of distance in this time. At present, it was halted at one of the bus stops. I looked outside to see which stop it was and found that I was halfway home. Almost everyone else from the bus had gotten down at that stop. Ticket. Ticket, the conductor reminded me again in his typical style. Yellow. Or sonido Yuzi, take this. And let him sleep, a voice from behind me said. It was the same strange old man. In his right hand, extended towards the conductor, he held a 2 rupee note. I looked at him and then at the conductor, who looked at both of us. Just out of the sleep, I couldn't make a lot of sense of this reaction from the old man. I slipped my hand in my pocket to pull out my change, but the old man stopped me. Nahi, nahi, uncle. I have money. I insisted on paying on my own. Don't worry, I will take it from your father. I know him, he responded. The conductor took the money from him and left us to go and sit next to the driver on the bonnet of the engine in the cabin area. At the back of the bus, that old man and I were the only passengers. You know my father? I inquired with a lot of interest. Yes. He smiled and came to sit next to me. I felt nice that someone knew my father and had paid my bus fare. I squeezed in towards the window, giving him more space to sit. He made himself comfortable and put his arm over my shoulder. I kept my 2 rupee note back in my pocket. I had saved 2 rupees. And, at the back of my mind, I was planning to treat myself to either a samosa or a jalebi from the Ram Bharos snacks shop under the huge banyan tree in the Kaka market. So where do you study? The old man asked me. Guru Nanak Public School. Oh, very nice, he said. I smiled back and turned my head to look outside. Come to our home tonight. There is a kid of your age in my house too. You can play with him. And my house is close to yours, he offered politely. No, no, uncle, I have to go back to my home, I excused myself. You know, I have gifted him a video game. It's called Mario. Have you ever played it? He persisted, and then pushed me back to stretch himself to the window in order to spit. The name of the video game made me very curious. I had heard about it from a few of my classmates. I had even asked my father to buy me one, but he had refused, saying it was too expensive, as usual.